Imagine a kingdom finally catching a break. No invasions, no chaos, no dramatic cousins trying to steal the throne. Just peace, order, and a young king who somehow looked like he read every book ever written before breakfast. That king was Solomon, and everyone agreed he was off to an absurdly good start. He didn't ask for power. He didn't ask for wealth. He didn't even ask for revenge on whoever forgot to invite him to childhood birthday parties. Instead, he asked for wisdom, the kind that helps someone judge people fairly, make solid decisions, and avoid embarrassing mistakes. Basically, the adulting package. People loved it. The officials loved it. The kingdom loved it. Even the neighbors, who usually complained about everything, loved it. It was the kind of beginning that makes historians suspicious. Too perfect, too smooth, too no way this stays like this for long. Solomon's early reign felt like a highlight reel. Smart decisions, peaceful negotiations, and zero scandals. He solved disputes like they were puzzles from a kid's activity book. He handled complicated politics like he'd been pre-installed with leadership software. Everyone kept waiting for him to mess up, not out of negativity, but because humans simply don't maintain 100% excellence without eventually tripping over something. Even the most brilliant people forget their passwords sometimes. But for a while, Solomon genuinely looked unstoppable. The kingdom grew stronger. Construction projects didn't run 3 months late like usual. The economy wasn't a disaster. And Solomon's reputation spread far beyond his borders. People traveled from miles away just to watch him speak. Imagine someone going viral before the internet existed. That's basically what happened. And the best part? Still no haters. Not a single grumpy old man standing in the corner saying, "Back in my day." Not one rival king rolling his eyes. When a leader has zero critics, it usually means one thing: the plot twist is warming up backstage. Solomon kept making flawless decisions, stacking achievement after achievement, like he was speedrunning greatness. He was the kind of king who made everyone else wonder if they should be doing more with their lives. But here's the thing: perfect beginnings tend to create unrealistic expectations. When someone is that good, people stop paying attention to the tiny details, the small choices, the subtle shifts, the barely noticeable habits that don't look dangerous at first. And in Solomon's case, those details were already forming, quietly, politely, without alarming anyone, because every story with a perfect start eventually finds its contrast. Not because the hero is bad, not because the world is unfair, but because even the smartest person alive is still a person. And people make choices, sometimes brilliant ones, sometimes questionable ones. Solomon was about to make both. But for now, the kingdom still believed they had the flawless king of their dreams. The calm before the storm always looks peaceful after all. Solomon didn't just gain wisdom, he gained momentum, real momentum, the kind that makes everyone talk like, wow, this guy might actually fix everything forever. But success has a funny habit. It attracts more responsibility, more expectations, and more opportunities to overdo absolutely everything. And that's where the first cracks quietly showed up. Because as Solomon's influence expanded, so did his habit of saying yes to almost every alliance proposal on the table. Neighboring rulers offered political friendships, Solomon accepted. Some offered marriages to formalize the alliances. Solomon nodded again. Others offered trade deals filled with gold, and he definitely did not say no to that one. Suddenly, everything around him was getting bigger. The palace? Bigger. The treasury? Bigger. The to-do list? Absolutely bigger. His kingdom started to look like a construction site with a crown on top. Dust everywhere, workers everywhere, new buildings sprouting like someone had accidentally opened a city upgrade cheat code. Modern equivalent? It was like watching a top-tier strategist who nails every big-picture decision, then slowly loses accuracy when dealing with the tiny choices that actually keep everything standing. Great vision, questionable day-to-day. Meanwhile, Solomon's schedule took on a life of its own. Meetings, ceremonies, alliances, another alliance, another marriage, another diplomatic dinner where everyone politely pretends the food is good. He was still wise, undeniably wise. But even wise people can be busy to the point of poor judgment. Dry humor alert. He was becoming the kind of man who could deliver a brilliant lecture on leadership, while forgetting where he left his own sandals. A wise man with a calendar full of questionable decisions. That was the key tension building under the surface. Wisdom doesn't block vanity. Intelligence doesn't prevent excess. No one is immune to thinking, just one more won't hurt, especially when everything is going well and every decision feels justified. And Solomon's just one more started stacking. One more treaty, one more palace wing, one more golden decoration that absolutely did not need to be that shiny, and one more partnership that looked harmless until it wasn't. These weren't catastrophic choices, not yet. They were tiny shifts, little deviations from the simplicity that made Solomon wise in the first place. The kind of compromises that don't look dangerous unless you line them up and realize they all point in the same direction. But here's the thing about cracks. Nobody notices them at first. They hide behind success, behind applause, behind the thrill of expansion. People don't panic over a hairline fracture, especially when the kingdom seems invincible. Still, the signs were there. Small, quiet, ignored. And like every ignored warning sign in history, they weren't going to stay small forever, because small cracks always become big problems. Solomon had a reputation, the wisest man alive. The problem with reputations is that people expect you to act like the title, even on days when you absolutely don't feel like it. And this was the phase when Solomon, ironically, started making choices that, well, didn't look wise at all. This wasn't a sudden collapse. It wasn't dramatic thunder, fire, or a narrator shouting, and then he failed. It was quieter, slower, more human. External influences began pushing in. Allies wanted more than simple friendship. Advisors whispered suggestions they should have kept to themselves. And political pressure stacked like unpaid bills, always arriving, never disappearing. At the same time, internal pressure hit harder. Solomon wasn't the same wide-eyed, clarity-driven young king anymore. He was older, busier, stretched thin, and convinced he could juggle every single responsibility without dropping a single plate. That's when dangerous political deals started slipping through his fingers. Agreements that looked brilliant in the moment, but suspicious in hindsight. Treaties built on shaky motivations, choices made out of convenience rather than conviction. Modern parallel? It was like watching a high-performance genius who thinks they can manage everything at once, until everything starts managing them. Brilliant people aren't immune to overload, they just disguise it better. And behind every decision, the same pattern kept repeating, just one more compromise, just one more alliance, just one more decision he didn't have time to think through. Observational dry humor moment, every just one more adds up, and it always charges interest. Solomon was running a tab without realizing it. This created the critical turn. His identity, once centered, grounded, focused, began to split. One part leading with wisdom, another part drifting with pressure, a third part navigating politics like someone trying to untangle headphones in the dark. Leadership weakened, not publicly, but in the subtle decisions that shape the long-term future no one sees at first. His purpose, once sharp and simple, started to blur at the edges. And no king functions well when his inner compass begins spinning like a weather vane in a storm. The consequences appeared quickly. Inside the kingdom, tension grew. Groups formed, opinions clashed. People watched decisions that didn't look like Solomon decisions and started asking questions. Was he losing control? Was he being influenced? Was the crown heavier than everyone thought? The direction of the kingdom began slipping, not all at once, but like a ship slightly turning off course until the destination becomes a mystery. And Solomon, wise as he was, couldn't see the full picture from inside the whirlwind he created, because the fallout was already forming, and it would reach far beyond him. The kingdom didn't collapse overnight. There was no dramatic explosion, no sudden rebellion, no epic movie scene with flags falling in slow motion. It started quietly, with relationships cracking, decisions missing their mark, and people slowly drifting into opposing sides. In short, the kingdom began to fracture, and wisdom wasn't the problem. Solomon still had wisdom. That part never disappeared. The issue was everything happening around the wisdom, the pressure, the noise, the endless obligations, the political deals that aged badly, and the alliances that aged even worse. Relationships already strained by years of diplomatic overload finally snapped. Advisors disagreed with each other. Tribal leaders pushed their own agendas. Citizens started whispering that the palace looked more complicated than the problems it was supposed to solve. Risky decisions didn't help either. The kind that looked calculated from the outside, but internally were more like, sure, let's hope this works. Solomon's judgment hadn't vanished. It was simply buried under a mountain of responsibilities no single person could manage perfectly. And so the people divided. Not dramatically, at first, just small disagreements. A little distrust. A few groups who preferred one policy over another. But tiny fractures become clear when the pressure is high, and the pressure was absolutely high. Modern parallel? This was the brilliant leader who understands every spreadsheet, every chart, every statistic, but somehow misses the human fractures happening right under his nose. Great at strategy. Slightly less great at noticing that half the people in the room stopped agreeing with him 3 decisions ago. The dry humor practically writes itself. Perfect logic, terrible timing, a plan that looks beautiful on paper and catastrophic in real life. That was the irony of this entire phase. The wisest man alive was overlooking outcomes that were not only predictable, they were consequences he himself created, not out of malice or carelessness, but because even the smartest person struggles when the load becomes too heavy and the kingdom becomes too complex to steer with flawless precision. And the important ripple effect? After Solomon, the kingdom doesn't stay whole. It splits. All that stability from chapter 1. Gone. What once looked unshakable became fragile, and what once felt united became 2 rival nations. And here's the harsh truth the narrative doesn't sugarcoat. Wisdom didn't prevent collapse. It wasn't enough. Not because wisdom failed, but because choices accumulate, pressure compounds, and cracks spread when no one pays attention to them. This is the part of the story that seems like it shouldn't happen. Not to someone this smart, not to someone with this level of reputation, not to a kingdom this successful, but it did. And this is the part that doesn't make sense and still happened. Solomon's story doesn't end with a dramatic twist, a final explosion, or a last-minute redemption arc. It ends with a lesson, one so simple and so uncomfortable that people still talk about it today. The direct answer to the title is clear. Solomon had wisdom, but made terrible mistakes because intelligence never replaces consistent choices. He wasn't a fraud. He wasn't pretending to be wise. His brilliance was real, his leadership was real, his accomplishments were real, but the consequences were also real. So here's the short recap. No dramatic music needed. Real wisdom, real glory, real excess, real cracks, and real consequences. It wasn't one mistake. It wasn't one bad moment. It was the slow accumulation of choices, pressures, alliances, distractions, and compromises that eventually pushed the kingdom past its limit. Modern truth? Knowing the right thing doesn't guarantee doing the right thing, and no brilliance compensates repeated impulsive decisions. The smartest person in the room can still make a poor choice if they're tired, overwhelmed, or surrounded by pressure. Wisdom doesn't make someone immune to human nature. It just gives them better tools. Tools Solomon didn't always use when they mattered most. Think of it this way. It's being excellent in theory and failing in everyday life. It's the student who aces the exam but forgets to set their alarm. The athlete who trains perfectly but trips during the race. The king who knows exactly what works and still chooses something else. Solomon's story isn't a gotcha. It doesn't exist to destroy his legacy. Instead, it reveals something universal. Even the wisest have blind spots. Even the most gifted can misjudge. Even the most experienced can lose clarity when life piles up faster than they can organize it. And that's what reshaped the kingdom. Not a lack of knowledge, but a pile of choices made under pressure, noise, distraction, and confidence that nothing could go wrong. His wisdom shaped a world. His mistakes reshaped a kingdom. And somehow, both sides of that sentence are true at the same time. So the lesson isn't, don't be like Solomon. That misses the point. The real insight is simpler. Brilliance is valuable, but responsibility is non-negotiable. You can have all the insight in the world, but if your choices drift, everything else drifts with them. And if Solomon, the wisest man alive, wasn't immune to that. No leader is. Now the only question left is, who should we break down next? David, Saul, or Hezekiah?